You do a weasel wrong. An old man told me, do a weasel wrong. Especially if you make the mistake of killing a weasel, then you're in trouble. Because brothers, sisters, family, they'll come for you. And they'll come for you when you least expect it. Very often when you're in bed, inside in bed in the dark of the night. And as he said to me, there's no point in trying to keep him out. A weasel will come through a small space, he'll come down the chimney. And by God, he'll, of course, make for your throat. He'll kill you. You'll be found in the morning with the marks in your throat. And that's it. How I began storytelling was by accident, and that's the answer I have to give honestly to people. That it was a lucky accident in the sense that I was in UCG, in UIG as they nicely call it now, and I was doing my MA in linguistics, phonetics. And of course for phonetics you have to be absolutely precise. As you know, people judge you by your mistakes, not the good things you do. They'll always be looking for the one mistake he made, so you better make sure that there's neither spelling mistakes or note mistakes or factual mistakes or anything else. Now, you might say, what has that to do with storytelling? It has a lot, because when I meet old people, and all my stories are collected from old people, I've been doing this for the last 33 years, most of them are tremendous people, but what I always do is I check them up afterwards. I check up and I follow, because you see it could be just a person telling you a yarn, which there's nothing wrong with. But if I get the notion that there could be truth in this happened in a particular place, I want to see that place. And I want to see, is there any kind of correlation between what I was told in the story and the place itself, if such a place exists. And what is remarkable is that in so many of the stories I'm told, when I do check them up afterwards, the place does exist. And the dimensions of the place, the fort was just there inside behind that gate, the hill was there, there was a stream, there is a stream there. You know, things sometimes are remarkably similar to what the person has been describing in the story. Now I know that still doesn't prove that the story is true, but it at least proves that the person who's telling it to you knows what they were talking about. And most of these people, they're tremendous people to talk, they want to talk. And some of them, yes, you can't get away from them. Come on, I have 3 more miles to walk yet. Oh, call back, and I do. And that's what makes the difference. I keep calling back and back and back, and very often I'm at these people's funerals. Because you can't just walk away once you got their stories. I'm not getting any money for this. I'm not getting paid for this at all. I just do it because I think it is worth doing. And I like visiting schools. I like visiting prisons. It is interesting to visit them, tell them stories about things. You know, you say somebody who has killed somebody or who really has come up tough through a bad background, and to be telling them stories about the fairies. You know, I mean, you think this is good, and you're fine. They listen. No, in a sense, you have a captive audience in prison. I know they can't go anywhere, but that's not the point. If they didn't like it, they'd just tell you fuck off, you know, straight out. But they don't. I've never had that reaction at all in prison. Amazingly so. That they're prepared to sit down, listen. Now, a lot depends on yourself, whether you're convinced of the thing or not, and if they see that when they ask questions, you can answer those questions, that you're not just lending off a story and that you have a story path like that. No, you can't do that. This notion of the fairies being, you know, the little Walt Disney fairies, and, you know, the little sparkly things with the wand and they'll come for your tooth and all the rest of it, that's a load of nonsense. You mess with the Irish fairies and you're dead. And I often tell people about this book: if you want to sleep tonight, start at the beginning. If you don't want to sleep tonight, start at the end. The last story in that is a gruesome story, and it happened only about 5 miles from here. just over the Galway border there about a man who, he didn't believe in the fairies. Yes, the fairies were only for children. And he planted spuds in a fairy fort, just to prove the point. I don't believe in these fuckers, these bloody... And the locals tried to warn him, hey, leave it. This isn't the kind of thing to be trying to prove that you're a man over. He took no notice of him. But I tell you, that man died a ferocious, horrible death. Bit by bit, his skin fell off, his hair fell out, his teeth fell out, his nails fell out, fingernails, toenails. He died in stages until he finally did die. And the fort is still there today. Nobody has interfered with it because local people know the story, and whether you believe in it or not is neither here nor there. Maybe we're all very brave, you see, when we're in daylight, when we're surrounded by our gadgets and technology, when we have our friends, or when we have noise around us. But I've been in places where, when I know the story about them, I wouldn't feel comfortable being there at night. Now, whether it would be my imagination playing on me, or I always like to leave, and I think this is vital with stories, I always like to leave a little corner of my mind open. This could be true. Why can't the fairies exist, we'll say? Now, I could say to them people who believe in God, that's completely irrational. Do you ever meet him? Huh? When do these dead people that you pray for come back to thank you? And in most cases, no. But, there again, you have to keep your mind open. Maybe there are such things as miracles. We're told that there are. And if there are such things as miracles, on the other hand, look at all the suicide bombers you have now that blow themselves up in the name of their God. They believe in something. I mightn't agree with it, and it's not a nice thing. And that maybe it's a perverted belief. But it's all in the other world. And it can have terrible repercussions here in this world. And I keep that in mind all the time when I'm either telling the stories or whether I'm collecting them. Some of the people I collect these stories from are very, very, very convincing people. I don't believe all the stories I hear. No way. I'd be as sceptical, and maybe more sceptical than most people, because I've been listening to them for over 30 years. But there's always that little percentage that, when it comes down to that, you can't dismiss so easily, because you've got to know the person telling them the story. And if that person is the kind of person that you know has a respect for the either be a religion or the otherworldly, or will say if they're talking about their parents or family who are dead, they're the kind of things that people usually don't make a joke about. And if you can hear stories about that are strange, unusual, it'll put you thinking, well, maybe, just maybe there is something to this. I always make a habit of watching people's faces as they tell me a story. And a face tells you a lot. You can tell by a person's face very often whether this story is just an entertainment, pass the time, or whether this person really does believe what they're telling. I've watched faces, and I tell you, some of them, the story and the face very often does fit together. The first group, they seemed to be carrying something above on their back. When she looked closer, she saw that it looked like something dead, because the paws were up in the air like that, and there they were carrying it along. And I thought she hadn't a clue, what the hell is this? And the dog backing away towards her all the time. So she just asked me there inside in the bank, she said, what could I have been looking at? Oh, I said, I know what you were looking at. And you are a mighty, mighty, mighty lucky woman, I said, that you had your dog with you. What you were looking at was a weasel's funeral. I said, I often heard about it from the old people, but I never saw one. And there you were looking at one, and you didn't know what it was. And I said, you are a very lucky woman that your dog was there with you, because if you had wandered into the middle of those weasels on their funeral, you'd be torn to pieces. These things didn't come down through generations for nothing. They started somewhere. They were carried on because there was some spark of something in them that was worthwhile, not just for entertainment, very often, as I say there about the weasels, for something that might save your life. So they're interesting, these stories. They're an abiding fascination, because there's always something new, always. They're about people, and not just people, but about people's relations with animals, with each other, with the landscape. I mean, that's an infinite resource, infinite.